Well, hello everyone. Today we are here again to discuss about literature in Indian diaspora. And for that I have Dr. Amit Kumar Mishra from Ambedkar University, Dr. Nandini Sen from Delhi University and Dr. Sahu from IGNOU. But before we proceed, what is diasporic literature? Diasporic literature is a very vast concept and an umbrella term that includes in it all those literary works written by authors outside their native country, but these works are associated with their homeland, their native culture and background. On that note, my first question to Professor Mishra, what is diasporic literature?
I would like to underline two very essential things which makes the literature diasporic literature. One, which you very rightly pointed out, that this is written outside the homeland, because that brings it, diasporic literature is one genre of literature where we talk about this question of authenticity, which we never talk about when we are discussing other genres of literature. The author's location, author's herself, how the experiences of her own becomes very, very important, And second is that diasporic literature is more like into this autobiographical narrative, A lot of it is the kind of a self-articulation of certain kind of a self-experience of encountering primarily the difference. So, the two things, location and second is a conscious attempt to always talk about encountering difference.
Ma'am, same question to you. What is diasporic literature?
See, the word diaspora, it comes from a Greek word, which basically means to scatter. So, effectively what happened when people moved from one part of the world to another, they scattered, they moved, they travelled, and along with them travelled their cultures, their languages, whatever they could take back from their homeland. And that eventually got translated when they started to write, that eventually got translated and into a form of literature, which currently globally gets known as diasporic literature. Now, this is a very broad kind of a definition that I am giving you. It encompasses much more than what I have actually articulated, and it's become very famous because we have quite a few award-winning writers who've travelled, since we're dealing with Indian diaspora, writers who've travelled from India and moved to foreign countries, and they have written. In my case, I'm going to only be talking about Anglophone novelists. So, they've written in English and they've written brilliantly, and they're award-winning writers. The books have been made into films, and that's what gives it a great deal of visibility. And it's in several different genres of literature. So, that's more or less what my definition of diasporic literature would be.
Sir, now my question to you is, what is the sociological significance of diasporic literature?
In fact, literature, if we see, it is a mirror of society. Literature is the lived experience of people. In diasporic world, it is documenting their adventure, their pain, their longingness to home, and a range of things which actually you cannot find in other painting or even social science. It is a psychological, cultural, social large array of lived experience of people is reflected in literature. But again, diasporic literature is not same in every diaspora. For example, in India, we have different experience. Chinese diaspora has different experience. Jewish diaspora has different experience, like so on and so forth. So, diasporic literature, that's why it's very diverse. Some literature are very, they are bringing out the victimhood, the collective consciousness which based on the victimization of their community. That is also diasporic literature. And today if we see Bharati Mukherjee and other, they are not talking of victimhood, they are talking something else, encounter with another culture. There are adventurous also, some diasporic literature today if you see, they are talking about more adventurous, how they have gone from India as a nothing person and today they are billionaire. Sometimes autobiographical literature is diasporic also. It's a very vast area. In a nutshell, what I can say, it documents the lived experience of people on the move, people in another host society, and people who are longing to come back. So, it is a very rich subject and sociologically very significant, because it actually gives the it actually preserves the present movement of diaspora.
Ma'am, my second question would be to you. What is the role of nostalgia and memory in diasporic literature?
See, like I was telling you earlier, so the earliest set of people, I mean, if we were to start to date, the first set of people who would have probably traveled out of India as indentured labor. Now, they didn't have too many possessions. The reason why they went as indentured labor was because they were extremely poor. Maybe some of them were even sold into, being indentured labor. So, they would have, the max that they would have managed to carry with them would be maybe a little potli which would have some turmeric in it, maybe a Bhagavad Gita, maybe a tone page, anything, maybe just some mitti, some soil they would have carried. And then they went to Trinidad or Mauritius or wherever that they would have been taken, and they were put to work over there. And in the evenings they would gather and they would sing songs to each other, they would talk about their homeland, and because they were missing their homeland so much, they almost pretended that this was a visit and they would be able to go back. Okay. So that pretense continued. They never felt or allowed themselves to feel that this was it, there was no return possible. So that hope that one day they would go back. And in all of this, they also romanticized their homeland. They pretended that their homeland was this great land of plenty, and so on and so forth. And they would sing songs and they would remember, they would, you see it in Amitabh Ghosh's novel that within a ship where they are traveling, they recreate a marriage. So marriage takes place, and how everybody comes together and says, okay, I'll put some haldi or I'll put something. And so it's like a recreation of what they have known. And that is how cultures got built, literally, in the new areas which they occupy.
Yeah.
So memory, nostalgia is extremely important, because that becomes the basic tool on which their lives initially was built, and one generation practically lived on that.
Okay. So what's your take on the same question, like what role of nostalgia and memory?
We all agree, and we all started with this thing that literature of Indian diaspora is huge, because the very formation of Indian diaspora is very long temporal construct. So what Professor Sen is saying is something which many of us would agree, that nostalgia, memory is very important, something which we talk about, and some authors like Naipaul would say hawker like thing, that they carry their cultural baggages. Baggages were not really physical baggages, but they were more like intangible things, okay, like memory, like song, like some kind of a wedding song, some kind of a childbirth song. So these are absolutely important. What I would like to underline is that nostalgia and memory for the old diaspora, the colonial diaspora, and nostalgia and memory for, say, Bharti Mukherjee or Jhumpa Lahiri's kind of diaspora is very different. Different because the longing of return in the older diaspora was longing for return. Most of them never returned back. Okay, but in the new diaspora, in the post-colonial genre where Amitabh Ghosh, where Bharti Mukherjee, Jhumpa Lahiri writes, the connectivity is very real. Most of them travel to India every year. So that memory is very different from the memory of an indentured laborer who went in 1860 to Trinidad. Okay, and that makes it very, very interesting point of comparison. That how do we bring these two together? Okay. The second point is, which is related to nostalgia, is a kind of image of homeland. The image and the imaginary of homeland which older diaspora had, and on which they tried to build, recreate, was more like what the French cultural theorist would use a term called imaginaire, an imagined state of mind.
Okay.
It was a state of mind. It was not very real.
On that note, sir, what are the major differences between colonial and post-colonial diasporic literature?
In fact, Professor Mishra already told few points about old generation, how they experience home, and the new generation with the television program and very time to time, they are seeing everything almost as we experience here in India, they also experience same way. So, they are different, the characteristics changes actually.
Ma'am, what is the concept of nature of identity of the diasporic individual?
Yeah, I'm so happy you're asking me this, because I kind of also
Yeah,
want to
this is the
answer
connect,
both
yeah.
my colleagues here. So, the nature of identity, as Professor here has pointed out, is a very complex identity.
Yes.
Because on the one hand,
So that diasporic individual has a complex identity.
very complex
Okay.
identity, because on the one hand, and again like Professor Sahu was saying, that we cannot talk about diaspora in unison, because there are phases of diaspora. So
Yes.
there was, while the old diaspora we are talking about people being how poor they were and they were taken to new lands. Today's diaspora is a different story altogether. People opt to leave their country.
Sir, now you explain me what are the other genres of Indian diasporic literature?
Yes, you see, what is in related to this is we don't look at it in that way, but there is a literature, there is a body of diaspora which is very significant, and that is Afro diaspora, African diaspora. That has a very long history, and they are not small in size. That's different from that. So so then we need to look at that, but that's something else. That's basically bringing in this whole idea of transnationalism into that. Africa has taken that. But there are two genres particularly which I would like to point out, specific to the question you have put to me. One is the literature which is written in other languages, the literature beyond the English.
Okay.
Okay. And second is a very important genre of literature which we often miss, but which is very powerful, and that is called the literature of the twice displaced diaspora. There is a very powerful, sizable community within the Indian diaspora all over the world, which actually is somewhere the twice or thrice displaced. The people who went from India to, say, East Africa, and then in 1960s, in the process of decolonization, they were forced to go out of East Africa. Most of them went to Canada, US, Australia. So they also wrote some literature about their experiences of the twice displaced, process. And that's very important. But let me come to first that the literature which is non-English literature. And in that, one comes very prominently is the Hindi literature. The literature which is about the Indian diaspora, but which is written in Hindi. Normally, we associate this genre with the colonial, but not so much. There are a lot of people, writers like Tejinder Banga and all, who live in London, who write like Jhumpa Lahiri about the very contemporary diaspora. But in the old diaspora, some of the names are very prominent. Like I would like to take example of Abhimanyu Anath from Mauritius, his very famous trilogy, Lal Pasina and all. Then a very important writer from Fiji, Subrami. He is a Tamil by origin, but he wrote a novel in Bhojpuri called Dauka Puran.
Yeah.
Oh, the Tamil writer wrote in Bhojpuri.
Think about that kind of a cultural transition, which comes out of this genre of literature. Think about that the thing. Then there is second, which I would like to, and there are several languages, but I would like to pick up one, and which is French. There's a considerable body of literature on Indian diaspora which is now being written in French. Only thing is that we don't have access to. Many of us are not frank. We don't understand French, we don't speak French. So we are ignorant of this genre of literature. Like there is a lady writer who lives in France, but she is from Mauritius, called Ananda Devi. She writes mostly in French.
Okay.
A very famous novel I would La Sari Var, The Green Sari, The Girl in Green Sari. It's an amazing articulation of a lady who lives in France, speaks French, but doesn't look like French. So what kind of alienation, what kind of cultural negotiation, adjustment she faces through. And the second genre, which is very important, and I would like to record it here, is this literature of twice displaced.
Okay.
Some of the writers like M.G. Vasanji, who lives in Canada, who became member of parliament, and the kind of suggestive titles they have. and that brings out that entire experience of diasporic displacement. That, diaspora, even if somebody gets the citizenship in United States, they always live in this state of temporariness. And that is so evident in this literature of the twice displaced. M.G. Vasanji wrote a novel called No New Land. Look at his, look at the very metaphor of the title. Wherever they go, they face the exclusion. Wherever they go, they face the same kind of uncertainty.
Yeah.
A lady called Ramabai Espinet, I used her name earlier, she wrote a novel which is very powerful called The Swinging Bridge. Look at the position of diaspora. It's always so uncertain. It's so metaphorical.
Yes.
So that is something which we need to read. When I'm not discounting that we should not read Jhumpa Lahiri. I'm a great admirer, particularly the lowland, which you talked about, the Naxal and the one part of family living in United States, one part of family living in India. But when we are trying to read these and similarly, Abhimanyu Anath, we must read that, but we must also read M.G. Vasanji and Ramabai Espinet to get the true sense of diasporic, dilemma. Diaspora is not diaspora if they come out of their dilemma, if they come out of their memory, if they come out of their nostalgia. So that kind of a powerful writing is something which we need to, highlight to our people who would like to know more about the Indian diasporic literature.
Ma'am, one word I came across, term I would say, Trishanku. And so ma'am, what is it and what is its relevance?
See, Trishanku means somebody who's suspended in the middle somewhere. So, yeah, so
so the best example is swinging bridge.
Yes, the swinging bridge. So exactly what Professor Mishra was talking about. So most of our diaspora writers, whether they are the older diaspora, obviously, whether they're contemporary diaspora, they remain in that swinging bridge. And there is always that homeland-hostland issue. So on the one hand, you have chosen the country where you wish to belong, and you are contributing to that country, but your heart remains. And I could give you an example, say, of a fourth generation. I mean, this is something that I've shared in a recent conference. A fourth generation Indian in Durban, calling herself an Indian. See, now they're rich, they have a lot of money, they can travel. They're actually trying to trace their ancestry back to wherever, but there are no records. It's very difficult to do, but it's a task that they undertake because at this point of time, they feel it is important that they know what their origins are. And then the construction of India, again in their minds, as a land of beauty, as a land of culture, as a land of, Sone ki Chidiya. Mostly fed in the contemporary times by our ubiquitous film industry, the Bollywood, which is hugely popular. So that understanding of India as being completely beautiful, completely religious, and so on and so forth, and it remains. And very interesting things I saw. So there was this gentleman who confided in me saying that his son traveled to India and was a completely changed person. He came back very religious. And I kept wondering, where in India did he go? Because I've lived all my life in India and no such thing happened to me. This Trishanku-like position is where you are somewhere hanging, This, why would, I mean, this is a question that I ask myself and I ask all of you, why would somebody who's a fourth generation South African want to call herself an Indian? That why needs to be answered. And that why, I feel, is what the Trishanku is.
Okay.
That's my interpretation.
Okay. So before we wrap up, the final question I'm going to ask all the panelists: why a student or anyone read diasporic literature?
In fact, when we see the human civilization, I think it is a movement of people. Anything you see in the civilization, progress, prosperity, urbanization, industrialization, even anything, innovation, it takes people, always on move. And the diasporic literature, what I feel, it actually documents the lived experience of the people who are on the move. As a sociologist, I feel like this. It's a civilizational, because diasporic literature now, it is a long way.
Yeah.
has come and long way to go. So, it is actually documenting how people are encountering other culture, settling, unsettling, on the move, twice migrant, all those things. So, world in a flux, you can say. So, this literature is documenting those movements. It's very
It has
significant.
come a long way and still a long way to go.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
absolutely.
Ma'am,
Absolutely.
what's your take?
Why should one study diaspora literature? Now, it's extremely important. Primarily, like I would say, you should read all literature, because literature is life, and you gain insight into life through literature. Diasporic literature becomes significantly important because here we have people who have traveled from places and to new places,
Yes.
started their own lives there, remained somewhat confused as to their identity. You had those terms like ABCD, American born Desi, confused Desi, to people who are no longer maybe confused but wish to forge ties with their homeland. So it has given rise to a wealth of literatures. The ones that Professor Mishra was talking about. So, you have writings in Bhojpuri, you have writings in Hindi, you have writings in English, French, people traveling, adopting new cultures, new languages, and putting out their experiences in a certain form. And that needs to be read in order to understand the socio-geopolitical underpinnings of the people who have moved and the people who have remained, because see, the homeland also is not a stagnant space.
Yes.
The homeland is also evolving.
Yes.
So, to be able to negotiate this changing landscape of the homeland and the difficulties and traumas and the good spaces of the host land, it is important to negotiate it through literature. So, therefore, it's extremely important, is what I feel.
So, what do you think about it?
I would like to take it in as a response not just to your question, but there is a growing body of discontent, or say kind of a voice which says that diasporic literature is too boring. It's very monotonous. One of the doyens of the post-colonial scholarship is a professor at Columbia called Gayatri Spivak. A couple of years ago, she said that she's not just uninterested, but she's contemptuous of this literature. She spent her life in diaspora. She is still in Indian diaspora. She lives in New York, teaches at Columbia. So that, coming from a scholar of the stature of Gayatri Spivak, it's a very strong challenge to rethink, relook at this whole currency of diaspora, which goes to your very question that why should we study diasporic literature? In my humble opinion, there are things which are very significant, particularly in the case of diasporic literature. As we all have been saying from the beginning, is that diasporic literature is not very imaginative literature. These are more articulation of the lived realities, and that is why in diasporic literature,
as we call it, experiential.
lived reality means experiences. Their
So,
articulation,
diasporic literature is experiential.
experiences. That's why we talk about this question. Somebody who has never been to United States,
Yes.
living in say Gorakhpur, writing about Indian diaspora in US, nobody will read that.
Yes.
Mind you,
Yeah.
because the question of authenticity, this is one literature where question of authenticity is significant.
Yes.
So what happens in this is that, and in this whole global world where we are talking about, and particularly with the rise of certain kind of ideology, where home, native, citizen becomes very important. The idea of nation, we are living in a global world, but nations are becoming very important. Brexit, Trump, kind of an articulation. Diaspora becomes subaltern. Nation is the dominant. There is a hierarchy, taxonomy, where the native is superior, the diaspora is inferior. So how does the diaspora articulate experiences? It's subaltern. So the diasporic literature is very important for us because it gives voice to that subaltern. In a larger national narrative, which is constructed through the images, through media, through television, through the politicians, through the political regimes, diasporic voices will not get articulated unless we go into this literature. The literature is about the lived reality. The literature is, this diasporic literature basically gives very important agency to the diaspora, they don't get to articulate. Many a times, like Indians in East Africa, they don't get that opportunity or the space or the medium to articulate themselves. So they go to literature. And if we ignore that literature, how do we get to know about their lives? So it's very important. It tells us about the lived realities.
Yes.
You know, and that is why it has got so much currency, and that is why I have so much faith in this genre of literature.
Thank you, sir. So on that note, well, diasporic literature has come a long way and still has a long way to go. As Professor Sen and Professor Mishra has mentioned that diasporic literature, lived realities, agencies and experiences. So I would like to thank all the panelists, Professor Mishra, Professor Sen and Professor Sahu, for telling us what is diasporic literature. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.